Okay.
Well, my name is Dolores. This is Attitudable Podcast. And today I am honored to have with me a very prolific author and who is just in the other part of the globe. He is Adam Beck, and he's in Japan, in Hiroshima. And I'm here in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. So Adam, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Dolores. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you.
It's a pleasure for us to learn more about yourself and about your work of so many years and so many books that you have already written and your famous blog. Can you please tell us more about yourself?
Well, the overview is simply that my name is Adam Beck, yes, and I came from the United States to Japan, to Hiroshima, Japan, 25 years ago. So time has passed very, very quickly, much more quickly than I expected. And in the beginning, I didn't expect to stay so long, but I did meet my wife-to-be soon after I arrived. Mm-hmm. And we now have 2 children, and they are now 17 and 14. And during the time I've been here, I've been mostly focused on working with children, bilingual and multilingual children. And I began my blog, Bilingual Monkeys, in 2012. And the forum, the Bilingual Zoo, I opened that in 2014. And I've written several books about raising bilingual children, including Maximize Your Child's Bilingual Ability. And the new book actually is called Bilingual Success Stories Around the World. So those are the highlights, I think.
Yes.
And I'm happy to talk about anything else.
Yes, amazing. I love the latest. Well, all your books are amazing, and your blog. How long have you been writing your blog? Your famous blog?
Well, yes, it started in 2012, and my children were younger at the time. And I was more actively blogging then because I was really in the middle of the experience raising bilingual kids. And so not only as a parent, but as a teacher, because I was a teacher for many years at the Hiroshima International School, where I had the opportunity to work with many, many bilingual and multilingual children. So as a teacher and as a parent, I then began the blog and was quite active until maybe last year. Well, my kids are older now, and so I don't have as much to write about personally. And so 3 years ago, I took on that book project, Bilingual Success Stories Around the World, which is about other people's experiences, other families around the world. So the first book, Maximize Your Child's Bilingual Ability, is based on my own experience as a teacher and as a parent. And then the new book, Bilingual Success Stories Around the World, is based on, well, it shares the success stories of a wide range of families in many parts of the world.
Yes, so this is like proved. I mean, you have evidence that it works. Excuse me. When you apply different methods and your own practice, it works, and you can really raise these bilingual children.
Absolutely, absolutely. The new book is full of these kinds of success stories, but when I say success story, it doesn't mean that every family is doing perfectly, because no family can. None of us are perfect at this. But what we do have, I think, is enough perseverance, persistence from day to day, and perseverance over the years of childhood, and that results in success. So it really is about persistence on a daily basis and perseverance over the years of childhood.
That is hard because as a mother of 4, I have 4 children, And I can really say that it's difficult to continue that throughout the years and throughout the days, that some weeks are harder than others. And some children are harder than others as well.
Yeah, I think that's true. It does go up and down. It's kind of a roller coaster, but like anything we want to do in our lives, I really think it's about perseverance finally, and not perfection again. We don't have to be perfect at this. We just need to persevere. And so I think one of the things I continuously tell parents is there's always a payoff to perseverance. There always is. And, the only way we can really fail at raising a bilingual child is if we give up entirely. As long as we keep moving forward day by day, and sometimes we need to take a break, and that's okay. But as long as we keep moving forward again and again and again, then our children will make progress. I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to happen as long as we keep going. So we just have to keep moving forward. And I think, and again, it's not simply about raising bilingual children, because I know your podcast is broader than that. But I think the idea is really the same, that we just have to keep going and not overthink it. Sometimes when it comes to bilingual children, parents sometimes overthink it, I think, and they get frustrated. They get in their own way because they're overthinking it. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. And yes, it does require a lot of determination and energy from day to day. But again, as long as we keep moving forward and not overthinking it, then we can continue to make a lot of rewarding progress over time.
Yeah. So you like your idea is to begin, even though you are not, or you think you are not ready, or everything is, prepared, or as you wish it were. Perfect.
Exactly. And that's true, actually, of many non-native parents. And in this new book, Bilingual Success Stories, it does feature several non-native parents of different languages. And in some cases, they may not have a lot of language ability, but they're growing, they're learning along with their children. And that's perfectly a valid way to approach this. So, we don't have to be perfect in our target language. Even as native speakers, none of us are perfect. We can always grow in our own language ability, no matter if we're native speakers of the language or not. So there are many, many parents out there who are non-native speakers of a language, but want to use that language with their child and hand it down to them. And it's very, very possible. But again, it takes some persistence and some perseverance.
Even though you are not in the language, in the place or the city or the country where the language is spoken, you mean that you can all anyway, as your case, raise bilingual kids learning like English, like if they were living in the States, for example?
Yeah, of course. And so, for example, in this book, there's a family in Spain, and they have been using English with their children. They are Spanish, both of the parents, but they're using English with their children, and their children now are bilingual. They're about 8 and 5 now, I believe. But I was there with them, and I was watching it in action. I traveled through Europe, and I had the pleasure of having short homestays with many families. And I stayed with them in Spain and saw how persistent they were, even if their language wasn't perfect, their English ability. And so, again, it's very possible. It really depends on the willingness and the determination to try and to make your efforts sustainable over time.
That's right. And as the name of my podcast, it's like an invented word, attitudable, because it's your attitude together with your capacity and ability to make things happen. Do you think that this attitude, varies depending on the kid, if it's a girl, a boy, or the age, of the person or even your own? Like if you're a young parent or an older parent, or is it like mostly similar or the same?
Well, everyone's different. And of course, attitude is a key part of this process, right? But again, it's not only about raising bilingual kids, it's about anything we want to do in our lives. Either our attitude is positive and pushing us forward in a productive way, or again, we're getting in our own way. That's when we tend to overthink things, or we think in a more negative way about things. Oh, it's not going to work out. I'm trying. Oh, she didn't listen to me today. Oh, what's the use? What I do see is parents giving up too soon because they've had some difficult experiences. But again, if they can move beyond those, if they can go over those difficulties or even around or underneath, but if they can continue past those difficulties, they can experience rewarding progress over time. So that's the kind of overarching attitude that I think we need for not only raising a bilingual child, but doing anything else that we really want to do in our lifetime.
Exactly. And do you have like a process or like a method that you keep on implementing or that you suggest, or it depends?
Well, it has to depend on the family to a large extent, because every family's circumstances are very different, of course. And so there isn't one method at all. And I think if you, the people out there also read this book, Bilingual Success Stories Around the World, I think what will strike them is that every family is so different, and their process, their method, their approach is naturally different because it's based on their own circumstances. And that's what makes it very interesting. And yet, at the same time, what's fascinating for me also is that, every family is so uniquely different. And that's what makes it interesting. And yet, in the deepest way, we all face the same challenge. And I believe that there are two core conditions involved in successfully raising a bilingual child. Number one, and this is universal, there's not too many things that are universal, but this is exposure to the target language. The child needs ample exposure, input in that language. And if they don't get enough of it, it's harder to make progress. It doesn't mean progress can't be made, but progress is generally in proportion to the amount of input or exposure that they're receiving, naturally enough. So that is necessary, because if for example, in my case, we're in Japan, of course, and the language here is Japanese. So my target language, our minority language, is English. And if I hadn't really been using a lot of English with my kids, if I had been relying on Japanese, or if I hadn't really made a lot of extra efforts to expose them to English from books and, music and other people, then they wouldn't have had enough exposure really to develop strong English ability. So number one is input in the language, is exposure to the language from as many different angles as possible. And that is universal. Number two is generally, I don't want to call it universal because it's not always true for every family, but number two is need, that the child needs to feel some kind of organic need to actively use the language. If they don't feel that in some way, then they'll probably simply rely on the majority language to communicate, right? They don't have a natural need to use the minority language. Now, I said that it's not always true. And again, I think the stories in my book reflect this fact, but there are some families, again, like this family in Spain, where the children, as they got older, of course, they were aware that their parents are Spanish and they're Spanish speakers. But the thing is, if you take a small child and you establish a bond with them, a relationship with them in a certain language, then it can be sustainable beyond the time when the child is aware that you actually have proficiency in the majority language, right? So those children in Spain, they're aware of their parents' ability in Spanish, but they do continue using English with their parents. Why? Because the relationship, the bond was established early on in English. So in effect, they have been conditioned or socialized to use English with their parents. So I don't think we could say they have an organic need to use English, sorry.
English.
They don't have an organic need to use English with their parents, but they do have kind of a perceived need or a felt need to continue using English with them. So there are, it depends on the family in terms of number two, but that's often a sticking point for families when the parents are trying to communicate with their children in the minority language, and yet the child is responding in the majority language, right? And so they can feel frustrated about that. And why is the child doing that? Because they don't really feel a need to use the minority language with that parent, because that parent is capable of using the majority language, and maybe that parent is even using the majority language with them. And that's kind of undercutting their aim, I'm afraid.
Exactly. And these like kind of routines that you have, that you also tell us or talk about that in your books, that, for example, you used to read to your children while having breakfast or early mornings when you begin the day, since they were very young. Do you continue doing that now that they are teenagers, almost both of them?
Yes, absolutely. So they're 17 and 14. And at this point, I read news to them. I have my iPad and we're sitting at breakfast, and they don't have a lot of time. They have to be off to school pretty early, but I can take 15 or 20 minutes to read a few news articles to them in English. And so it's really developed over the years, but I've maintained this routine of reading aloud to them from the time they were very small until they run screaming from the house. I will continue this routine. But let me just say that I think the two main things over time have been talking a lot, talking to my children in English, and reading a lot to them. So, when I boil it down for particularly new parents or parents with younger children, I often just say the two main things are talk a lot and read a lot. If you do those two things and nothing else, though I encourage everything else, but those are the two main things. I think those are the two main pillars of progress.
Perfect. And your children pay attention to you, even though they are teenagers, because sometimes it's harder when they grow older.
That's a very interesting question. Do they pay attention? Yes and no. I mean, they're like teenagers everywhere. They're becoming busy and independent, and we have a lot less time together, and that's something else I've really been I've been underscoring for parents recently. Make the most of your children's younger years, because they pass so quickly. Before you know it, your children are teenagers. And when they are teenagers, you just don't have much time with them anymore. And you have to find ways to spend time with them. And so I created some books, like coloring books. And now I have a new book coming out. It's a wordless picture book. And I made these books with my son. So that was a way for us to work together, to create together, and to, continue to sustain our relationship in a more active way.
Yes, I saw one of them that you work together, and so you involve him in your own work. And this is a way of, like, as you said, interacting, and also for him continue learning about the language and the way to teach it. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
he is
Yeah.
also happily involved. He likes
Yeah.
this
It's been
opportunity of
such,
working.
yeah, it's been a really good creative experience because he's very talented and he has a really good eye. So, for example, this new book, this wordless picture book is called Bearded Dragon, Home
Mm.
Alone. And there's no text. It's a story told in illustrations.
Ah.
And he, again and again, he pointed out things that I didn't really notice that really did make the illustrations stronger. So I give him a lot of credit for the books that we have created because it may be me that's kind of driving the projects forward, but his input has been really valuable.
Yes, they really surprise us sometimes, no? Our own kids with their ideas or their words, no? They
Yeah.
are amazing. Well, this is so important for everybody. And for me as a translator and as a linguist, the way language is kept and improved and always help us to communicate and to be more open and global, because in a
Yeah.
way, as you said, we are all connected. And
Mm.
it's so important to be able to speak and understand different languages all over the world.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a possibility for every family if that's a commitment you want to make. And I'm not saying it's, that every family has to do this, like my family or many other families, but, um, you know, languages for a child to have more than one language is a great gift, I think, for their future, no matter what the language might be. So um, I just want parents to understand that the opportunity is there if you choose to accept it and make the commitment. And there's a lot of support out there as well. Of course, you could go to my blog, Bilingual Monkeys, my forum, the Bilingual Zoo. I do have the books I mentioned. And there are many, many more people out there who are happy to offer support through social media and other types of websites. And so there's a lot of support out there. I mean, I think it's been growing over the past 10, 20 years since I've been involved in this field. So I
Yeah.
wish all parents as much success as possible, that you can really enjoy a success story too.
Yes, Adam. Well, you were a pioneer on this, I think, because your
Well,
books are most, yes, or not.
well, I know I'm really just following in the footsteps of many people that came before me, and I'm sharing what I've learned as a teacher and as a parent. And if that can be helpful to other people and help their family, again, have their own success story, then that's very, very gratifying to me.
Yes, and you keep on because you have Japanese and English in your own family, and also
Yeah,
Spanish,
a little
or
bit, but
kind
that's
of.
that's been, it's been a secondary second language. So, in
Mhm.
fact, my children, we had a woman from Spain who lives in Hiroshima, and she was coming twice a month and had lessons with my kids, and they were making some good progress. And then with the pandemic, it was hard to sustain that. And as they've gotten older now too, it's just hard to sustain extra activities. So they haven't had a lot of Spanish exposure over the past year or so, but it's there. I think they do have some foundation, and hopefully someday they'll be able to pick it back up. But
Yes.
yeah, our main two languages, of course, are Japanese and English.
And their minds are more flexible and agile, I think, to be ready to learn and acquire more languages because of
I
all
think
this
this, yeah,
education.
I agree. I think that's very possible. So we'll see where this takes them, but they do have two strong languages, and I think those languages will take them in many exciting directions for their own life. And that'll be beyond me. And then I can just maybe sit back and do something different. I don't know,
Yes,
but I feel like
amazing.
I'm getting to the end of my own bilingual journey with my kids.
Yes, then will come your grandchildren, and you keep on you keep on with the job.
I guess so. Well,
Or you,
I'll continue reading aloud. I love reading aloud.
yes. Well, thanks a lot, Adam, for all your books, all your words, your blog, your continuous help, as you said, all over the world. Imagine I'm in Argentina and I'm following you and many, many people with all your ideas and your education. So I would like you to finish and to give us like a last word of encouragement for parents and people having children and wanting them to be fully bilingual in their future.
Well, first of all, thank you, Dolores. It was really a pleasure for me to speak with you today. Again, I would just, I want to stress that idea that there's always a payoff to perseverance. So, and that's true of raising bilingual children or anything else in your child's life or in your personal life. I do know it's possible. I do think, based on my own experience, you know, as a writer, sometimes a struggling writer, that it just takes a little bit more effort to get past those points where you feel stuck, you know, where you feel like it's not working, but you just have to keep trying for another day. So that's true of raising bilingual children or anything else you want to accomplish in your lifetime. And I simply encourage you to move forward as best you can, and you'll experience a lot of rewarding progress over time. Good luck.
Thank you. You are the living experience of this. So thank you for this. Thank you.
Yes, of course. It's my pleasure. Thank you.